They're betraying you tonight, the waitress whispered to the Mafia boss moments before a $100 million deal. One split-second decision to warn a dangerous stranger changed everything. Instead of a thank you, she's kidnapped from the parking garage that same night. Forced to become his assistant, she discovers the ruthless crime lord has been tracking her for years. But when the FBI approaches with shocking photos and an ultimatum, help them or go to prison, she's trapped between two impossible choices. The deeper she falls into his world of luxury, violence, and unexpected tenderness, the more dangerous the game becomes. What she doesn't know is that her father's dying promise connects them in ways neither could imagine. As rival mafia families, corrupt FBI agents, and $100 million hang in the balance, one question remains. Why would a waitress risk everything to save the city's most feared man? And what price will they both pay for that whispered warning? The black fabric of the hood smothered Luciana's panicked breaths as rough hands guided her into the vehicle. Her heart hammered against her ribs while the car's engine roared to life, tires squealing against the parking garage concrete. The scent of expensive leather seats mixed with a woodsy cologne that hadn't been there when they first grabbed her. "Check her for weapons and phones," a deep voice commanded from somewhere to her left. Male hands patted down her waitress uniform, removing her phone and small pepper spray keychain from her pocket. "She's clean, boss," another voice reported. The hood trapped her quickening breaths, making the air hot and stale. Luciana forced herself to breathe slower, her nursing training kicking in as she recognized the signs of oncoming hyperventilation. She couldn't afford to panic now. "Miss Rossi," Salvatore Moretti's voice cut through the darkness, closer than she expected. "I find myself curious about what motivated your helpful warning earlier this evening." The way he drawled the word helpful sent chills down her spine. She swallowed hard, her throat dry. I couldn't just let people die," she managed to say, her voice smaller than she wanted it to be, a low chuckle, devoid of warmth. "How noble. And what made you think I was in any real danger?" "The men," Luciana started, then took another steadying breath. They were specific about the timing. The wire transfer amount, they seemed very certain about their plans. The SUV turned sharply, and Luciana struggled to maintain her balance on the seat. Strong hands steadied her before she could fall, then quickly withdrew. "Remove her hood," Salvatore ordered. The fabric lifted, and Luciana blinked rapidly as her eyes adjusted to the dim interior lighting. They were in a luxury SUV with privacy dividers and what looked like bulletproof glass. Two large men in dark suits occupied the seats facing backward, while Salvatore sat beside her, his presence commanding the space. He studied her, with dark eyes that missed nothing, taking in her disheveled uniform, her messy ponytail, the way her hands twisted nervously in her lap. "You understand that involving yourself in my business affairs has consequences?" Luciana lifted her chin slightly. "I understood there would be consequences the moment I decided to warn you, but I couldn't live with myself if I'd said nothing and people died." "Even criminals?" His tone was sardonic. "I assure you, Miss Rossi, none of us are innocent men." "A life is a life," she replied quietly. "My job as a nurse is to help people, not judge them." Something flickered in Salvatore's expression. Surprise, perhaps, or curiosity. "Ah, yes, nursing school. Top of your class at Thomas Jefferson University, I'm told. Working 2 jobs to pay your way through. No family to speak of." The casual recitation of details about her life sent a fresh wave of fear through her. "You've been investigating me?" "From the moment you approached my table, I had to determine if you were part of the plot." He leaned back, adjusting his perfectly pressed suit jacket. "You weren't, which makes your warning both more interesting and more complicated." The car slowed, turning onto what felt like a smoother road. Luciana gathered her courage. What are you going to do with me?" "That depends entirely on how the next few hours unfold." Salvatore checked his watch, a timepiece that probably cost more than her annual tuition. "If your information proves accurate, I'll be in your debt. If not..." He let the implied threat hang in the air. "I only told you what I heard," Luciana insisted. "I have no reason to lie." "Everyone has reasons to lie, Miss Rossi. The question is whether their reasons outweigh their fear of consequences." His phone buzzed, and he checked it briefly before returning his attention to her. "We'll know soon enough." Luciana tried to track their route through the windows, but the unfamiliar streets offered no clues to their destination. The 2 guards watched her, with blank expressions, their suit jackets clearly concealing weapons. Despite her fear, she couldn't help noticing how Salvatore's presence seemed to fill the vehicle. Not just physically, but with an aura of contained power that made the space feel smaller. "Your father," Salvatore said suddenly, making her jump. "He disappeared when you were young?" The question caught her off guard. "Yes, I was 5. After my mother died, he just vanished one day, left me with a neighbor, and never came back." Something unreadable passed across Salvatore's features. "And you never learned what happened to him?" "No. The police searched, but—" Luciana shrugged, the old pain a familiar ache. "Eventually, I ended up in foster care. Why do you ask?" Instead of answering, Salvatore turned to look out the window, his jaw tight. The car's interior fell into tense silence, broken only by the sound of tires on pavement and the occasional crackle of a radio from the front seat. Luciana's mind raced with questions she didn't dare ask. The evening had spiraled so far beyond normal that it felt almost dreamlike, except for the very real danger emanating from the man beside her. She'd acted on impulse, driven by her inherent need to prevent harm. Now she was paying the price for that moment of moral clarity, trapped in a vehicle with one of Philadelphia's most dangerous men, heading toward an unknown destination and an uncertain fate. Luciana squinted as the hood was pulled from her head, her eyes adjusting to the warm lighting of what appeared to be a study. Rich mahogany bookshelves lined the walls from floor to ceiling, filled with leather-bound volumes. A massive desk dominated the space, behind which Salvatore Moretti sat watching her with penetrating dark eyes. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, she glimpsed manicured grounds stretching into darkness, punctuated by security lights. Men in tactical gear patrolled with dogs, their movements precise and practiced. This wasn't just a house, it was a fortress. "Miss Rossi." Salvatore's voice was soft but carried unmistakable authority. "Let's discuss your rather surprising intervention this evening." 2 guards flanked the study's double doors, their hands never far from their weapons. The one on the right, whom Salvatore had called Enzo, watched her with particular intensity, his expression giving nothing away. "There's nothing to discuss," Luciana said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I overheard something I shouldn't have, and I made a choice. A choice that saved my life, and cost several others theirs." Salvatore leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. "Why would a waitress risk everything to warn someone like me?" "I'm not just a waitress." She lifted her chin slightly. "I'm a nursing student. Saving lives is what I'm trained to do, even if they belong to people others might think don't deserve saving." "How noble." His tone carried a hint of mockery. "And I suppose the Calabrese family had nothing to do with your sudden attack of conscience." Confusion crossed her features. "The who? I don't know what you're talking about. I worked 2 jobs to pay for nursing school at Jefferson. That's it. That's my whole life." "Enzo." Salvatore didn't take his eyes off her. "Verify everything. Her employment history, school records, family connections. I want to know what she ate for breakfast 5 years ago." The security chief nodded once and left silently. Luciana felt the weight of Salvatore's scrutiny like a physical thing, heavy and suffocating. "Until we confirm your story, you'll be staying in one of the guest rooms." He pressed a button on his desk, and a maid appeared almost instantly. "Maria will show you upstairs. I suggest you make yourself comfortable. You may be here a while." The room Maria led her to was larger than Luciana's entire apartment, with a 4-poster bed and silk sheets that probably cost more than her monthly rent. Despite the luxury, the windows were sealed and a guard stood outside her door. A beautiful cage was still a cage. Throughout Friday, she paced the room like a trapped animal. Maria brought her meals on silver trays and fresh clothes that somehow fit perfectly, but no phone or laptop appeared. The hours crawled by, marked only by the changing light through the windows and the shift changes of the guards outside her door. As evening approached, she heard footsteps in the hallway. Salvatore entered, followed by Enzo. The security chief's face remained impassive, but something in his posture had changed. "It seems we owe you an apology, Miss Rossi," Salvatore said, though he didn't sound particularly apologetic. "Your story checks out. We also discovered that a new waiter at Waitress was recently hired using false credentials. He has connections to certain parties who would wish me harm." Relief flooded through her. "So I can go home now?" "I'm afraid it's not that simple." Salvatore moved to the window, gazing out at his secured grounds. "Thanks to your warning, we intercepted the ambush. The deal proceeded successfully. However, this creates a new problem. You? Me? But I helped you." "Precisely. You've been seen with me. Multiple parties now know you possess valuable information about my operations, information they would kill to obtain." He turned back to face her, his expression grave. Your old life ended the moment you whispered in my ear. Luciana felt the blood drain from her face. What are you talking about? Your apartment has been cleared out. Your withdrawal from nursing school has been processed. Your resignation letters have been submitted to both jobs. He listed off the dismantling of her life with clinical detachment. You have two choices: remain here as my guest, protected by my security, or disappear permanently. And I don't mean witness protection. The room seemed to spin. Everything she'd worked for, every dream she'd pursued, gone in an instant because of one impulsive decision to prevent bloodshed. She collapsed into a nearby chair, her legs no longer able to support her. There's really no way out, is there? Salvatore's response was simple and final. Not anymore. Looking at him standing there, powerful and immovable as a mountain, Luciana finally understood the true cost of her compassion. In trying to save a life, she'd sacrificed her own. The worst part was knowing she'd probably make the same choice again. It was who she was, who she'd trained to be. But now that innate desire to help others had trapped her in a gilded cage with one of Philadelphia's most dangerous men. The setting sun cast long shadows through the windows, painting the luxurious room in shades of blood and gold. Outside, guards continued their endless patrols. Dogs prowled the perimeter, and high walls separated this world of wealth and violence from the normal life she'd never see again. The Saturday morning sun filtered through the expensive curtains, finding Luciana curled in the massive bed. She'd barely slept, her mind racing with escape plans. The luxurious room felt suffocating despite its size. Egyptian cotton sheets and crystal water glasses couldn't disguise the fact that she was a prisoner. Maria arrived with breakfast on a silver tray, her movements efficient and practiced. As she arranged the food, Luciana saw her opportunity. Maria, she whispered, slipping her cherished silver bracelet from her wrist. This was my mother's. It's worth at least $500. If you help me get a message out. The maid's face hardened. Without a word, she turned and left the room. Within minutes, heavy footsteps approached in the hallway. Luciana's heart sank. First attempt failed. By noon, she'd formulated another plan. The kitchen staff was busy preparing lunch, doors propped open as deliveries arrived. While the guards changed shifts, she slipped downstairs, adopting the purposeful walk she'd perfected as a waitress. She made it through 3 corridors before a firm hand gripped her elbow. Enzo materialized beside her, silent as a shadow. The boss wants to see you, he said simply, steering her toward Salvatore's study. Salvatore sat behind his massive desk, reading glasses perched on his nose as he reviewed documents. He didn't look up immediately, letting her stew in nervous anticipation. 2 escape attempts before lunch, he finally said, removing his glasses. I admire your initiative, if not your execution. Are you going to punish me? No. He leaned back, studying her. I'm going to hire you. Luciana blinked. What? You're intelligent, observant, and clearly need to stay occupied. I need a new personal assistant. The solution seems obvious. You want me to work for you after I tried to escape? Think of it as a mutually beneficial arrangement. You get purpose and relative freedom within the estate. I keep you close and ensure no rivals can reach you. His dark eyes held hers. Unless you prefer remaining locked in your room? It was a chance, maybe her only chance, to gain his trust, to learn the estate's rhythms, and eventually find a real way out. What would this job entail? Managing my schedule, screening calls, organizing files, taking notes in meetings. He gestured to the desk. Come, I'll show you. The next several hours passed in a blur of instruction. Salvatore proved to be a surprisingly patient teacher, explaining his complex filing system and scheduling protocols. He showed her how to prioritize calls and which business associates received immediate access. A mistake here could cost millions, he warned, or lives. Pay attention. Throughout Saturday afternoon and into Sunday, Luciana absorbed the mansion's daily rhythm. Security rotations, staff schedules, delivery times. She noted everything while appearing to focus solely on her new duties. Salvatore granted her access to the main floor and business areas, though Enzo's men maintained discreet observation. She learned to navigate the labyrinth of corridors, coordinate with the household staff, and anticipate Salvatore's needs. Sunday evening brought her first real test, a formal dinner with Salvatore's 5 underbosses. The massive dining room gleamed with crystal and silver as Luciana helped the staff prepare. You'll serve drinks before dinner, Salvatore instructed. Remember their preferences. Details matter. The underbosses arrived in expensive suits, their power evident in their swagger. Luciana moved efficiently between them, pouring wine and delivering cocktails. She was reaching across Carlo Vittori with his whiskey when his meaty hand wrapped around her wrist. "Pretty little thing," he leered, thumb stroking her skin. "Where's Moretti been hiding you?" The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Before Luciana could pull away, Salvatore appeared beside them. His movement was so swift, so controlled, that most missed it. But the crack of Carlo's fingers breaking echoed like gunshots. Carlo howled, clutching his mangled hand. Salvatore's voice cut through the noise, arctic cold. "She is not to be touched." The other underbosses watched with raised eyebrows, reading volumes into that simple statement. Their gazes shifted between Salvatore's deadly calm expression and Luciana's shocked face, noting how their boss positioned himself slightly in front of her. The intensity in Salvatore's eyes when he looked at her made Luciana's breath catch. There was possession there, yes, but also something darker, hungrier, something that thrilled and terrified her in equal measure. "Enzo," Salvatore said quietly, "help Mr. Vittori find someone to set those fingers." His gaze never left Luciana. "Then we'll discuss tonight's business." As Carlo was led away, still cursing, the remaining underbosses exchanged knowing looks. The waitress wasn't just staff, she was protected. And in their world, that only happened for very specific reasons. Luciana retreated to prepare the dinner service, her wrist still tingling where Carlo had grabbed her. The violence of Salvatore's response should have horrified her. Instead, she felt an unsettling mix of fear and fascination. She'd seen both sides of him today, the patient teacher and the ruthless boss. The question was, which one would determine her fate? Monday dawned with a crisp autumn chill. Luciana arrived at Salvatore's study promptly at 8, armed with his preferred espresso and the morning's schedule. She'd spent the weekend memorizing his routines, determined to excel at this role, if only to maintain whatever fragile trust she'd earned. "Your 9 o'clock with Harrison Development called to confirm," she said, placing the espresso on his desk, "and the Waste Management Quarterly Review is set for 2. Salvatore nodded, already absorbed in his phone calls. Luciana settled at her smaller desk in the corner, organizing his calendar. The schedule revealed an interesting pattern. Meetings with real estate developers, restaurant owners, and waste management executives filled most slots. Legitimate businesses, on paper at least. But scattered between them were cryptic appointments marked only with initials. MR at noon. DC at 4. The morning passed in a blur of calls and paperwork until a commotion outside drew their attention. Enzo burst in without knocking, something Luciana had never seen him do. "FBI raid at the South Philly warehouse," he reported tersely. "They're going through everything." Salvatore's expression didn't change, but his knuckles whitened around his pen. "Increased security here, no one in or out without direct clearance." He turned to Luciana. "Cancel my external appointments for today. Move them to next week." She nodded, already reaching for the phone. Throughout the afternoon, Salvatore remained in his private study, emerging only to issue brief instructions. Security patrols doubled around the estate's perimeter. Black SUVs with tinted windows arrived carrying stern-faced men who headed straight for Salvatore's study. While he was occupied with his mysterious visitors, Luciana began organizing the filing cabinet as instructed. In the drawer, marked Personnel, she found a folder with her name. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The contents stole her breath. Her entire life lay documented in clinical detail: her mother's death certificate, her father's disappearance report from 21 years ago, photos of various foster homes, her nursing school application essay, even her weekly work schedule from Betry. Salvatore hadn't just verified her story, he'd compiled her entire history. One document caught her eye, a handwritten note about her father, Anthony Rossi. It mentioned him working as an enforcer before entering witness protection. The implications made her head spin. Her father had been involved with the mob, with Salvatore. She carefully replaced the folder, mind racing. Salvatore had known exactly who she was that night at the restaurant. The question was, why hadn't he told her? Tuesday morning brought weak sunshine and an unexpected privilege: permission to walk the gardens, albeit with Marco, one of Enzo's security team, following at a discreet distance. The estate's grounds stretched for acres, meticulously maintained with geometric hedges and classical statuary. Luciana was admiring a marble fountain when a woman appeared beside her. "Beautiful morning for a walk," she said casually, then flashed a badge. "Agent Catherine Hayes, FBI, don't react, your shadow is watching." Luciana's heart hammered, but she kept her expression neutral, pretending to study the fountain. We've been building a RICO case against Moretti for years, Hayes continued softly. You could help us finally bring him down. We'll offer full witness protection, new identity, new location, clean slate. And if I refuse? Hayes smiled tightly. Let's discuss that somewhere more private. Meet me in the library in 2 hours. I have clearance to be here. We're conducting interviews throughout the estate today. True to her word, Hayes was waiting in the library that afternoon. She spread photos across a mahogany table, crystal clear shots of Luciana whispering to Salvatore at Waitress, followed by surveillance photos from the docks showing her in the background during what was clearly an illegal weapons deal. The evidence links you directly to their operations, Hayes said. You have 2 choices. Help us bring down Moretti or go to prison alongside him. 25 years minimum for conspiracy and weapons trafficking. Luciana stared at the photos, nausea rising. She'd known helping Salvatore that night was dangerous, but seeing the evidence made it terrifyingly real. I need time to think, she managed. You have 48 hours. Hayes gathered the photos. Choose wisely. As the agent left, movement caught Luciana's eye. Through the library's tall windows, she glimpsed Salvatore watching from his upstairs study. Had he seen her with Hayes? His expression revealed nothing before he disappeared from view. That night, sleep eluded her. She paced her luxurious prison, weighing impossible options. Betray Salvatore, who'd shown both ruthlessness and strange moments of consideration? The man who'd protected her from Carlo but also held her captive? Or refuse to cooperate and spend decades in prison? The folder she'd found complicated everything. Salvatore knew about her father, knew her entire history. There were depths to the situation she didn't understand. Why had he really kept her here? Was it truly just about preventing her from talking to rivals? Or was there something more? Moonlight spilled through her windows as she wrestled with her choices. The estate's grounds stretched silent and dark beyond her room, the increased security patrols barely visible in the shadows. Somewhere out there, Agent Hayes waited for her answer. And somewhere in this mansion, Salvatore held secrets about her past that might change everything. Her wrists still tingled where he'd protected her from Carlo's unwanted touch. The memory of his intensity, his instant violence in her defense, sent shivers down her spine. How could the same man who broke fingers so casually also spend hours patiently teaching her his filing system? The dawn would bring no easy answers. Wednesday morning arrived with chaos. Salvatore burst into Luciana's room at dawn, his usual composed demeanor replaced by controlled urgency. Pack essentials only, we're leaving in an hour. She scrambled to comply, mind racing. What's happening? The FBI raid wasn't random, he said, watching from the doorway as she gathered clothes. Someone inside my organization is talking. This estate isn't secure anymore. Within the hour, they were in an unmarked black SUV, Enzo at the wheel and another guard following in a separate vehicle. Luciana watched the Philadelphia skyline fade in the rearview mirror as they headed north. Salvatore worked silently beside her, typing on a laptop and making occasional calls in Italian. The drive took them deep into the Pocono Mountains, where autumn had already painted the forests in brilliant reds and golds. After 3 hours of winding roads, they turned onto a private drive that seemed to disappear into the wilderness. The lake house that emerged from the trees was a masterpiece of glass and stone, its modern lines somehow perfectly at home in the natural setting. Welcome to our temporary residence, Salvatore said as they pulled up to the entrance. It's more secure than the estate, with fewer potential leaks. Luciana soon learned that fewer meant skeletal staffing, just a housekeeper who arrived each morning and left before dark, and a single security guard who patrolled the extensive grounds. The reduced personnel made the sprawling house feel incredibly intimate. She spent Wednesday afternoon exploring her new prison, though prison seemed an inadequate word for such luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows dominated every room, offering breathtaking views of the lake and surrounding mountains. The gourmet kitchen gleamed with professional-grade appliances. Their bedrooms were positioned at opposite ends of the main floor, sharing a common living area between them. The forced proximity to Salvatore was immediately apparent. At the estate, she could go hours without seeing him, losing herself in the massive property's many rooms and gardens. Here, his presence was constant, overwhelming. She felt his eyes on her as she familiarized herself with the kitchen, memorizing where everything was stored. Your duties remain the same, he informed her over a late lunch. Though our location has changed, business continues. Evening brought another unsettling discovery. Her phone showed no service bars. and when she tried to access the internet on her laptop, she found it heavily restricted and monitored. The isolation was complete. No communication with the outside world except through Salvatore's secured channels. She watched through the windows as Enzo and the other guard settled into the guest house across the property. The realization hit hard. She was essentially alone with one of Philadelphia's most dangerous men. The house grew quiet as night fell. Unable to sleep, Luciana padded into the kitchen for water. Through the glass walls, she spotted Salvatore on the deck, a silhouette against the moonlit lake. A crystal tumbler of amber liquid glinted in his hand. After a moment's hesitation, she stepped outside. The autumn air carried a bite, and she wrapped her arms around herself as she approached. Without speaking, Salvatore poured a second glass of whiskey and held it out to her. She accepted it, noting how the expensive crystal caught the moonlight. Why bring me here instead of leaving me at the estate? The question, that had burned all day, finally escaped. Why trust that I won't poison your coffee or stab you in your sleep? Salvatore took a long drink before answering, his eyes fixed on the dark water below. I haven't trusted anyone since my father was murdered by his own consigliere 20 years ago. His voice carried an edge of old pain. But you risked your life to warn a man you didn't know, an alleged criminal who could have killed you for what you heard. That kind of courage, that kind of foolish integrity, it makes me want to remember what trust feels like. Their glasses clinked softly in the night air. Luciana studied his profile, seeing not the ruthless Mafia boss, but a man shaped by betrayal. The moonlight softened his features, revealing glimpses of vulnerability she'd never noticed before. The lake stretched before them like black glass, reflecting stars and silence. Mountains loomed as dark shadows against the night sky. The isolation that had seemed oppressive earlier now felt almost peaceful, as if they'd stepped outside the normal world into a place where new understandings were possible. They drank in companionable quiet, the whiskey warming Luciana from within. She was acutely aware of Salvatore's presence beside her, the subtle scent of his cologne mixing with the crisp mountain air. This forced intimacy was dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with violence or crime. The security guard made his rounds below, his flashlight beam sweeping across the property in regular intervals. From the guest house, a single light burned in what must be Enzo's window. The night wrapped around them like a cocoon, making their shared moment feel somehow separate from the realities of who they were and why they were here. Sunlight filtered through the lake house windows when Luciana found the handwritten note on the kitchen counter. Salvatore's precise handwriting requested breakfast at 8 a.m. After days of tension and uncertainty, the simple task of cooking felt surprisingly grounding. She explored the gourmet kitchen, finding high-end ingredients stocked in the pantry and refrigerator. Her hands moved with purpose as she prepared fresh coffee, sliced fruit, and started on eggs and pancakes. The familiar motions of measuring, mixing, and cooking provided a sense of normalcy she hadn't realized she'd been craving. At exactly 8, Salvatore appeared in the kitchen. His usual sharp suit was replaced by a casual black sweater that somehow made him look more approachable. "This is unexpected," he said, surveying the spread she'd laid out. "Good unexpected, I hope." Luciana placed a cup of coffee in front of him, prepared the way she'd observed he liked it. "Very good." He took a bite of the pancakes and nodded appreciatively. "You didn't mention you could cook. There's a lot we don't know about each other." The words slipped out before she could stop them, but rather than tensing, Salvatore's expression softened slightly. "Tell me about nursing. School," he said, surprising her. "What drew you to that profession?" Luciana settled across from him with her own plate. "I like helping people heal. In foster care, I saw how much difference compassionate medical care could make." She paused, wondering if she'd said too much, but Salvatore seemed genuinely interested. Their morning routine developed naturally after breakfast. Luciana helped Salvatore with business calls and emails, taking notes and organizing his schedule. The work kept her mind occupied, preventing her from dwelling too much on her situation. In the afternoon, they separated. Salvatore retreated to his study while Luciana ventured outside. The property had several walking trails winding through the forest and along the lakeshore. She could feel the security guard's presence, always watching from a distance. But the illusion of freedom was welcome. The lake's surface rippled with approaching weather, dark clouds gathering on the horizon. When she returned to the house, she found Salvatore checking his phone's weather radar with unusual frequency. His jaw was tight, shoulders tense. During dinner, thunder rumbled in the distance. Salvatore barely touched his food, his eyes darting to the windows with each flash of lightning. The weather report had warned of a severe storm, but his reaction seemed extreme for someone so usually composed. By midnight, the storm hit full force. Wind howled around the house's modern architecture, and rain lashed against the windows in sheets. Unable to sleep, Luciana went to make tea, finding comfort in the kitchen's warmth. A crash from Salvatore's study startled her. She hesitated, knowing she should return to her room, but concern drove her forward. The study door was ajar, lightning illuminating the scene within in stark bursts. Salvatore gripped his desk's edge, knuckles white and face sheet pale. His breathing came in short gasps, sweat beading on his forehead. The composed, dangerous man she knew had vanished, replaced by someone fighting inner demons. Without thinking, Luciana sat beside him on the floor, close enough to offer presence without touching. Another thunderclap shook the house, and she saw him flinch. "When I was 10, she began softly, I convinced my foster brother we could make a swimming pool by flooding the backyard with garden hoses. The story tumbled out, followed by others. The time she accidentally dyed her hair green before a school photo. Her first disastrous attempt at drawing blood in nursing school. She talked through the storm, her voice steady against the thunder. Gradually, Salvatore's breathing slowed. His grip on the desk loosened, though tension still radiated from his body. Around 3 a.m, the storm began to ease. Rain softened to a gentle patter, thunder moving further away. In the quiet that followed, Salvatore spoke. I was 7. His voice was barely audible, rough with memory. My father's rivals found our house, my mother. He swallowed hard. She hid me in the basement before they caught her, but it was storming like tonight. The basement started flooding. Luciana's heart clenched as he continued. I listened to them kill her while I tried not to drown. Stayed quiet, like she told me, even when the water reached my chest. My father found me hours later, half drowned in the dark. The confession hung between them, heavy with decades of trauma. Luciana saw with sudden clarity how that terrified boy had become this dangerous man, how his ruthlessness was armor built from suffering. Dawn's first light was creeping through the windows when they finally stood. Salvatore looked exhausted, but somehow lighter, as if sharing his burden had eased it slightly. His hand brushed hers as they parted, fingers gentle against her skin. Thank you. The whispered words carried such raw vulnerability that Luciana felt something shift inside her. The walls she'd built against him, the distance she'd tried to maintain, they cracked beneath the weight of this new understanding. They parted without further words, each retreating to their rooms as morning painted the lake in soft colors. But something had fundamentally changed between them, as inevitable as the storm that had sparked it. The morning sun streamed through the lake house windows, casting warm light across the kitchen as Luciana prepared breakfast. Her hands moved automatically through the motions of cooking, her mind replaying the vulnerability Salvatore had shown during the storm. When he entered the kitchen, their eyes met with new awareness before quickly looking away. Coffee, she offered, already reaching for his cup. Please. His voice was controlled again, the commanding crime boss back in place. But something softer lingered in his expression. They ate in comfortable silence, carefully dancing around any mention of the previous night. Salvatore reviewed documents while drinking his coffee, occasionally asking Luciana's opinion on scheduling matters. The easy domesticity of the moment almost made her forget she was essentially his prisoner. I'll be on calls most of the morning, he informed her, rising from the table. Handle any non-urgent messages. Once Salvatore disappeared into his study, Luciana began clearing the breakfast dishes. As she searched for storage containers in the kitchen drawers, her hand brushed against something hard and metallic. Her heart jumped. A satellite phone, carefully concealed beneath kitchen linens. She glanced toward the study, hearing Salvatore's muffled voice on his call. With trembling fingers, she pulled out the phone and dialed Agent Hayes' number from memory. Her pulse pounded as it rang. Hayes, came the immediate answer. It's Luciana, she whispered, keeping one eye on the study door. Finally. Listen carefully. We've identified Rafael Castellano as the one behind the ambush attempt at the docks. He's planning another hit during the commission meeting next. Weak. Luciana's stomach clenched. Rafael? But he's Salvatore's business partner. Exactly why he's gotten so close. We're prepared to offer you full immunity in writing if you help us. We need you to plant a listening device in Salvatore's study. The gravity of the choice before her made Luciana's head spin. I need time to think. Don't take too long. The commission meeting is coming up fast. After quickly ending the call and returning the phone, Luciana tried to steady her shaking hands. The morning stretched on endlessly as she sorted through emails and paperwork, hyper-aware of Salvatore's presence in the next room. Every time she looked at him, guilt gnawed at her conscience. When Salvatore stepped out with Enzo for a security check, Luciana seized the opportunity to verify Hayes' information. She found his calendar on the laptop he'd provided for her work. There it was, Thursday's commission meeting at the Golden Crown Hotel in Atlantic City. The afternoon sun was low when Salvatore suggested dinner on the deck. Luciana welcomed the distraction of cooking, needing something to occupy her racing thoughts. They ate watching the sunset paint the lake in brilliant oranges and pinks. The restaurant group is expanding, Salvatore mentioned, surprising her with business talk. We're acquiring 3 more locations next month. Legitimate businesses? She asked carefully. Mostly. His lip quirked. The legitimate portfolio grows every year. Real estate, restaurants, waste management, construction. Why not focus entirely on those, with your resources? She let the question hang. Salvatore's expression darkened. It's not that simple. Family obligations, rival families watching for any sign of weakness. He took a slow sip of wine. The moment you show weakness in my world, you're dead, and everyone connected to you dies too. The weight of his words settled heavily between them. Luciana studied his profile in the fading light, seeing both the dangerous man who commanded an empire and the wounded boy from the flooded basement. She knew she had to warn him about Raphael, even if she couldn't reveal her FBI contact. As they cleared the dinner dishes together, their hands brushed, reaching for the same plate. Electricity crackled between them at the brief contact. Salvatore's fingers lingered near hers, his eyes darkening with an intensity that made her breath catch. The air felt thick with unspoken tension. Luciana stepped back, mumbling something about being tired. She retreated to her room, but sleep proved impossible. Her mind spun with conflicting emotions, growing attraction to a man she should fear, guilt over her deal with Hayes, fear of prison, and genuine concern for Salvatore's safety. She paced her room, the plush carpet muffling her footsteps. The memory of his touch burned on her skin, while Agent Hayes' words echoed in her head. How had she ended up here, caught between a dangerous crime boss and the FBI? More importantly, how could she protect Salvatore from Raphael's betrayal without revealing her own? Through her window, she could see Salvatore's silhouette on the deck, his broad shoulders tense as he stared out at the dark lake. The distance between them felt both vast and microscopic, a chasm filled with secrets and growing attraction that threatened to consume them both. Saturday morning dawned with heavy clouds matching Salvatore's mood as his phone rang before breakfast. His expression darkened as he listened, then disappeared into his study without a word to Luciana. The door closed with a decisive click, leaving her alone with her churning thoughts. After an hour passed with no sign of him emerging, Luciana retrieved the satellite phone from the kitchen drawer. Her hands shook less this time as she dialed Hayes' number. I need more details about Raphael's betrayal, she whispered when Hayes answered. How can I warn Salvatore without revealing my connection to you? Raphael's been working with Assistant Director Weber for months, Hayes explained. He's using FBI resources to eliminate his competition while protecting his own operations. The commission meeting is his chance to take out multiple targets. But why target Salvatore specifically? The weapons deal you disrupted was worth $100 million. Raphael wants access to Salvatore's offshore accounts and territory. He's been gathering intel for years while pretending to be a loyal partner. Luciana's stomach twisted. What exactly do you expect me to do? Plant the listening device. We'll handle the rest. Hayes paused. Monday's your deadline. After that, the deal's off the table. The call ended just as Luciana heard movement from the study. She quickly returned the phone to its hiding place, her mind racing with the new information. Hours passed before Salvatore finally emerged, tension radiating from his rigid posture. His usual composure was fractured, revealing cracks of agitation in his controlled facade. We need to return to Philadelphia briefly on Monday, he announced, running a hand through his dark hair. There's a situation with the restaurant group that requires my personal attention. Luciana's pulse quickened. A trip to Philadelphia meant potential contact with Hayes, maybe even a chance to negotiate better terms. How long will we be there? Just the day. We'll return here Monday evening. His eyes narrowed slightly. Why? Just wondering if I should pack anything specific, she deflected smoothly. As evening approached, Salvatore stepped outside to speak with the security team. Luciana seized her chance, slipping into his study. She rifled through papers on his desk, searching for anything connecting Raphael to the commission meeting. Finding nothing, she grabbed Salvatore's personal phone, fingers flying as she looked for suspicious messages. Planning to betray me after all. Luciana's heart stopped. Salvatore stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable as he effectively blocked her only escape route. The phone slipped from her nerveless fingers. "I can explain," she began, but he was already advancing, each measured step forcing her backward until she hit the desk. "Can you?" His voice remained eerily calm. "Who are you working with? The Calabrese family? The FBI?" He planted his hands on the desk on either side of her, caging her in. "I trusted you." Something inside Luciana snapped. "Trusted me? You kidnapped me! You destroyed my life!" The words burst from her like a dam breaking. "I was trying to help you, just like I helped you that night at the restaurant. I've been trying to protect you, even though you've taken everything from me." "Protect me?" He leaned closer, his breath fanning her face. "By going through my phone, by sneaking around my study." "Yes!" She glared up at him, refusing to be intimidated despite their proximity. "Because that's the only way to get information in your world of secrets and lies and betrayal." They stood frozen, chests heaving, faces inches apart. The air crackled with electricity, tension pulling taut between them like a wire about to snap. Salvatore's eyes dropped to her lips, darkening with something beyond anger. The kiss, when it came, was explosive. His mouth crashed down on hers as he pulled her roughly against him, one hand tangling in her hair while the other gripped her waist. Luciana gasped, and he took advantage, deepening the kiss with desperate intensity. She found herself responding with equal fervor, months of suppressed attraction igniting like gasoline thrown on flames. His grip tightened possessively as she wound her arms around his neck, pressing closer. The kiss turned hungry, demanding, his tongue sliding against hers as she melted into him. The solid warmth of his chest against hers felt right in a way that made her heart ache. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Salvatore rested his forehead against hers. "No one has ever put my safety before their own," he confessed roughly. "That night at the restaurant, you risked everything to warn a stranger. I've been trying to understand why I can't get you out of my mind ever since you whispered in my ear." The tenderness in his voice made guilt twist like a knife in Luciana's chest. She thought of Hayes, the listening device, her betrayal already in motion. The chemistry between them was undeniable, but the secrets between them were insurmountable. "I can't do this," she whispered, disentangling herself from his embrace. She fled to her room, leaving him standing alone in his study. Behind her locked door, Luciana pressed trembling fingers to her lips, still burning from his kiss. She sank onto the bed, desire warring with guilt as she faced the impossible choice before her. The memory of his touch haunted her through the sleepless night, a constant reminder of everything she wanted but couldn't have. Sunday morning brought a heavy silence to the lake house. Luciana avoided the kitchen until her hunger forced her downstairs, only to find Salvatore already gone. Enzo stood in the great room, his presence more guard than companion. "Mr. Moretti was called to Philadelphia for an emergency," he informed her. "You're to remain here. No phones, no computers, no leaving the property." Luciana nodded, relief and disappointment warring in her chest. The memory of last night's kiss burned fresh in her mind. The desperate press of his lips, the possessive grip of his hands, the way her body had melted against his before reality crashed back. She spent the morning pacing the lake house like a caged animal, her thoughts circling endlessly. The weight of her deception pressed down on her with each step. She'd agreed to wear a wire, to betray the man who'd shown her both his darkness and vulnerability. The same man who'd kissed her like she was oxygen and he was drowning. By afternoon, she'd worn a path in the plush carpeting of her room. Every scenario she played out ended in disaster. If she helped the FBI, Salvatore would eventually discover her betrayal. If she refused, she faced prison. But it was the third option, continuing to deceive him while falling deeper into whatever this was between them, that felt most impossible. "I have to tell him everything," she whispered to her reflection in the window. The lake stretched out beyond, calm and indifferent to her turmoil. The sun was setting when the SUV's headlights swept across the front of the house. Salvatore strode in, his expression holding a cold satisfaction that made her shiver. "The traitor has been identified," he announced without preamble. "Not from your amateur detective work in my office, but through my own sources." His eyes held hers. "You'll accompany me tomorrow to a meeting. As my assistant, your presence is required." Luciana's throat went dry. "What kind of meeting?" "The kind where loyalty is rewarded and betrayal is punished." Monday morning dawned gray and hostile. They drove in tense silence to an abandoned warehouse outside Philadelphia, the concrete structure looming against the colorless sky. Inside, the space was vast and empty except for a small group of men near the center. They dragged forward a struggling figure who fell to his knees. "Please, Mr. Moretti," the man sobbed. "I can explain." Salvatore's voice was terrifyingly calm. "3 of my men are dead because you sold information about our shipment routes." He pulled out a handgun. "Their families will be taken care of, yours won't." The single gunshot echoed off the walls. Luciana flinched but couldn't look away as the man crumpled. This was Salvatore's true nature, efficient, lethal, uncompromising. The gentle man who'd shared his trauma during the thunderstorm seemed like a dream. On the drive back, she finally found her voice. "How can you just execute someone like that? No trial, no chance to defend himself." "My world has its own justice system," Salvatore replied evenly. "Loyalty is rewarded with protection, prosperity, family. Betrayal is punished swiftly and finely. It's cleaner than your legitimate courts, where money buys freedom and victims wait years for closure. That's not justice, it's murder. It's survival." He glanced at her. "I protect what's mine, always." The truth hit her then. She was falling in love with a man whose moral code existed in shades of gray she might never comprehend. A man who could execute a traitor in the morning and tenderly kiss her scars at night. They had barely finished dinner when Agent Hayes appeared at the lake house, her arrival shattering the fragile peace. Salvatore's eyes narrowed, but he nodded when Hayes requested to speak with Luciana privately. On the deck, Hayes didn't waste time. "Your father wasn't just some deadbeat who abandoned you. He was one of Moretti's enforcers. He went into witness protection 15 years ago." The world tilted on its axis. Luciana gripped the railing. "What? I thought you should know who you're really dealing with." Luciana stormed back inside, confronting Salvatore. "You knew about my father? All this time?" His expression softened. "I've been searching for you for years. Not for revenge, because of a promise." He stepped closer. "Your father took a bullet for me during a Calabrese ambush. His last words were making me swear to protect his daughter." "Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed anything I said that first night? That I kidnapped you to fulfill a dying man's wish?" His eyes held hers. "Your father was the only person who ever sacrificed everything for me. Protecting you was the least I could do." The truth of her situation crashed over her. The FBI deal, Raphael's planned betrayal, her growing feelings for Salvatore. She couldn't maintain the lies anymore. "I need to tell you something," she whispered, and began her confession. The lake house kitchen filled with morning light as Salvatore spread documents across the granite island. His expression was focused, calculating, showing no trace of the anger Luciana had expected after her confession about the FBI deal. "Your honesty changes nothing about Raphael's betrayal," he said, arranging papers with precise movements. "But it gives us an advantage he won't expect." Luciana watched him work, amazed by how quickly his strategic mind transformed a potential disaster into an opportunity. "You're not angry about the FBI?" "Angry?" His lip curved slightly. "You were coerced and still chose to warn me. That's loyalty I can work with." Throughout the morning, Salvatore made calls to his most trusted lieutenants, carefully orchestrating what appeared to be routine commission meeting preparations. Each conversation contained subtle information: shipping schedules, account numbers, security rotations, all crafted to reach Raphael through his network of spies. "Watch how this works," Salvatore explained, pulling Luciana closer to examine a document. "These numbers look legitimate, but there is a pattern my people recognize as false. When Raphael acts on this information, he'll reveal himself." The complexity of Salvatore's plan stunned her. Every detail served multiple purposes: testing loyalties, identifying leaks, and laying groundwork for Raphael's downfall. He showed her how to drop seemingly casual comments that would make their way through the criminal grapevine, each carrying hidden meanings for those who knew to look. "Your nursing background actually helps," he noted. "You understand how systems work together, how one change affects everything else." By afternoon, Salvatore's study had transformed into a command center. Maps and schedules covered the walls, each marking another piece of his elaborate trap. Luciana found herself drawn into the intricate dance of information and counter-information, suggesting ways to make their deceptions more convincing. The best lies, Salvatore taught her, contain enough truth to be believable, but enough fiction to be fatal, if someone acts on them without full knowledge. Agent Hayes arrived as the sun was setting, carrying a briefcase that seemed to weigh heavily in her hands. She had no idea she was walking into a situation Salvatore had already mastered. "The wire is standard FBI issue," Hayes explained, demonstrating the equipment. "It will transmit everything within a 15-foot radius. All you need to do is stay close enough to record incriminating conversations. Salvatore waited until Hayes left before examining the wire with expert hands. Antonio, he said, calling his tech specialist. Can you modify this to be selective in what it transmits? Child's play, boss, Antonio replied over the speakerphone. I'll have it ready by tomorrow. Luciana paced the study, anxiety building as the plan's dangers became clear. I should be the one wearing the wire at the commission meeting. I'm less likely to be searched, and if something goes wrong... No! Salvatore's voice was sharp. He crossed to her, gripping her shoulders. Raphael is sadistic. If he discovers your role, I won't let fear stop me from protecting you. Something raw flickered in Salvatore's eyes. I've spent my life trusting no one, caring about nothing except power and survival. His hands tightened on her shoulders. But the thought of losing you... The words seemed to strangle in his throat. Luciana reached up, touching his face. The gesture broke something between them. Salvatore pulled her against him, his mouth finding hers with desperate intensity. They came together like a storm breaking, all the tension and fear and unspoken feelings exploding into passionate need. He lifted her onto his desk, papers scattering unnoticed as they shed clothes with frantic hands. Every touch felt electric, charged with the danger awaiting them. Salvatore's hands and mouth explored her body with possessive hunger, drawing gasps and moans that echoed in the study. Luciana arched against him as he entered her, their bodies finding a rhythm that spoke of claim and surrender. It was raw and tender at once, neither gentle nor rough, but perfectly matched to their emotional storm. They moved together with increasing urgency, driving each other higher until release crashed over them in waves. Afterward, they lay tangled together on the leather couch, sweat cooling on their skin. Salvatore traced patterns on her back, his touch possessive yet gentle. Whatever happens Thursday, he murmured. Remember this moment. Remember that you made me feel human again. Luciana pressed closer, memorizing his heartbeat. They both knew the danger waiting at the commission meeting, but for now they had this unexpected love, forged in darkness and trust. Thursday evening arrived too quickly. The Atlantic City Hotel gleamed with luxury, its grand ballroom transformed for the gathering of crime families. Luciana circulated among the most dangerous men on the East Coast, playing her role perfectly, while the modified wire transmitted selected conversations. She watched Salvatore command the room, discussing territory and profit margins with a power that seemed to draw everyone into his orbit. Raphael arrived fashionably late, his smile too wide as he embraced Salvatore like a brother. Wonderful to see you recovered from that unfortunate dock incident, Raphael said smoothly. Fortunate timing, Salvatore replied, matching his tone. The meeting progressed with superficial civility, masking deadly undercurrents. When Raphael excused himself for a call, Luciana waited 5 minutes before checking on the catering as planned. The hotel corridor seemed deserted. Then hands grabbed her from behind, a sweet-smelling cloth covering her mouth and nose. As consciousness faded, she saw Raphael's cold smile swimming above her. Tell Salvatore his little bird sang beautifully, he whispered, darkness claiming her before she could scream. Salvatore paced the elegant hotel corridor, his usual composure cracking as minutes ticked by without sign of Luciana. The other commission members had departed, leaving only his security team searching the premises. Cold dread settled in his stomach. He'd seen that look in Raphael's eyes before, right before someone disappeared permanently. Boss, Enzo called from the suite doorway. You need to see this. Inside the luxury suite, Salvatore's laptop screen flickered to life with an incoming video call. The image that appeared made his blood run cold. Luciana sat bound to a metal chair, her face bruised, but her eyes still defiant. Raphael's smug face appeared in frame. Your little songbird is quite resilient, Raphael taunted. Though I'm disappointed you thought I wouldn't notice your amateur attempt at manipulation. Salvatore's fingers dug into the leather chair. Name your price. Always the businessman. Simple enough, I want access to your offshore accounts. All of them. You have until noon tomorrow. Raphael traced a finger down Luciana's cheek, making her flinch. Or I start removing pieces of your pretty assistant. As Salvatore's tech team worked to trace the call, the suite door burst open. FBI agents poured in with weapons drawn, Agent Hayes in the lead. Salvatore Moretti, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder and criminal enterprise. Salvatore's mind raced as they cuffed him. This timing wasn't coincidental. The pieces clicked. Raphael had modified Luciana's recordings before sending them to the FBI. In the elevator down to the waiting vehicles, Hayes played a segment of audio. Salvatore's voice discussing the elimination of rival families to control the East Coast. The quality was good, but he detected subtle signs of manipulation. Raphael's work was thorough. Dawn found Luciana regaining consciousness in a vast warehouse, her head throbbing. Industrial equipment cast strange shadows in the dim light. Raphael sat nearby, examining his manicured nails. Finally awake. We have work to do. He smiled, all predatory charm. You see, I've spent years planning this. Salvatore's territory, his connections, his reputation, all of it should have been mine. And thanks to my friends in high places, it will be. He described his arrangement with the corrupt Justice Department official who protected his operations while targeting his rivals. Luciana memorized every detail, knowing it might be her only leverage. Now, Raphael held up another wireless microphone. You're going to call Salvatore and get his account information. One wrong word, one hint that you're being watched, and I start with your fingers. In FBI custody, Salvatore called in favors from every connection he'd cultivated over decades. Despite believing Luciana might have betrayed him, he couldn't leave her to Raphael's mercy. He knew exactly what that mercy looked like. He'd seen the bodies. When the call came through to his holding cell, he instantly recognized the strain in Luciana's voice. She asked about his accounts with artificial casualness that told him she was being monitored. His response wove encoded references to backup plans and safe house locations that his lieutenants would recognize. Agent Hayes sat reviewing evidence in her office, frowning at inconsistencies in the timeline. The audio quality of the recordings showed subtle variations that shouldn't exist in a single wire transmission. She confronted Salvatore in the interrogation room. Something's wrong with this evidence. What aren't you telling me? Salvatore leaned forward. Rafael Castellano is a confidential informant for Assistant Director Weber. They've been using FBI resources to eliminate Rafael's competition for years. My people have already sent proof to internal affairs. Hayes' skepticism wavered as she investigated his claims. The electronic records painted a damning picture of corruption, reaching high into the bureau. Salvatore's attorney arrived with crucial intelligence. Luciana had been moved to an abandoned factory in Camden, Raphael's preferred location for private business. The implications made Salvatore's jaw clench. He'd found other victims there before, none of them whole. Time was running out. When Hayes returned, Salvatore laid out his offer. I'll give you Raphael and Weber, plus my full cooperation. In exchange, I walk free and Luciana gets immunity. Hayes studied him, weighing justice against pragmatism as the noon deadline approached. Why risk everything for her? She wore the wire. Because she warned me that night at the restaurant when she had every reason to stay silent. Because she's the first person in 20 years I've trusted enough to let see my weaknesses. And because I love her, even if she betrayed me. The clock on the wall ticked steadily as Hayes considered the deal that would determine not just Luciana's fate, but the course of justice itself. The amber glow of sunset painted Philadelphia's skyline as Salvatore emerged from the federal building, his expression betraying nothing of the past 24 hours' tension. Agent Hayes stood at the bottom of the steps, holding out a piece of paper with coordinates scrawled in hasty handwriting. Camden, Old Riverside Chemical, that's where our surveillance places them, she said, her voice low. But you never got this from me. The tactical team, Salvatore straightened his cuffs, already mentally calculating timing and angles. Moving in at midnight. Whatever you're planning, do it fast. He was already dialing Enzo as his driver pulled up in an unmarked SUV. Within 30 minutes, they'd assembled at a warehouse Salvatore kept for emergencies. His most trusted men, 12 in total, Stigia, were gearing up with tactical vests and weapons that had been cached there for exactly this type of situation. 3 teams, Salvatore directed, spreading out blueprints of the factory he'd obtained through his construction contacts. Antonio's team takes the north entrance. Marco's team covers the loading docks. My team hits the main entrance. Enzo stepped forward, his face tight with concern. Boss, let me lead the main assault. You're too valuable. She's in there because of me, Salvatore cut him off. I'm going in. The factory loomed against the darkening sky, its broken windows like dead eyes staring down at them. Through high-end thermal imaging equipment, they watched heat signatures moving inside. 15 distinct bodies patrolling in regular patterns. In the basement level, a single stationary figure radiated heat. There, Salvatore pointed. That's her. They moved like shadows through the surrounding industrial wasteland. 2 of Salvatore's men, former special forces, took out the power junction box with practiced efficiency. The factory plunged into darkness, and the team activated their night vision gear. Inside, Raphael paced the basement room, checking his phone compulsively. Your boyfriend seems to value his money more than your life, he snarled at Luciana. She said nothing, focusing on her breathing through the pain. Her wrists were raw from the restraints, but the physical discomfort was nothing compared to the psychological torture of wondering if Salvatore believed she'd betrayed him. The first sign something was wrong came when Raphael's phone lost signal. Then the lights went out. His radio crackled with static, then silence. Check the breakers, he barked at his men. Neither returned. Upstairs, Salvatore's teams moved with surgical precision. Silenced weapons dropped sentries before they could raise alarms. The resistance stiffened near the central office area, where Raphael's better-trained personal guards were stationed. Gunfire erupted, the sound echoing off metal walls and concrete floors. Luciana's heart leaped at the distant sounds of fighting. She'd survived hours of Raphael's escalating fury by holding on to one truth. Salvatore was too smart to believe the doctored recordings. He would come for her. The basement door burst inward as Salvatore charged through, weapon raised. Blood stained his tactical vest where a bullet had grazed his arm. Two of Raphael's men lay dead in the hallway behind him. Raphael yanked Luciana up by her hair, pressing his pistol to her temple. Always the hero, Moretti, but you're too late. Your accounts are already mine, and the feds are minutes away. Salvatore's eyes met Luciana's. In that fraction of a second, an entire conversation passed between them. Trust, understanding, love. Instead of the careful negotiation Raphael expected, Salvatore exploded into motion. The bullet caught him in the shoulder, but momentum carried him forward. His knife found Raphael's throat with deadly accuracy. Hot blood sprayed as Raphael collapsed, his final expression one of shocked disbelief that Salvatore would risk himself so recklessly. Lucy, Salvatore breathed, cutting her restraints with trembling hands. He gathered her carefully against his chest, mindful of her injuries. I've got you. You're safe. You knew? She whispered, her throat raw from screaming. You knew I didn't betray you. He pressed his forehead to hers, his breath warm against her face. Your voice on that phone call. You were warning me, just like that night at the restaurant. My brave, foolish woman, always trying to save me. Above them, boots thundered on metal staircases as the FBI tactical team breached the building. Salvatore lifted Luciana gently to her feet. Can you walk? She nodded, leaning heavily against him as he guided her to a rusty door half hidden behind old chemical tanks. It opened to reveal a maintenance tunnel, the air thick with the smell of river water. Enzo's waiting with a boat, he explained, supporting her down the slippery concrete passage. Just a little further. The antiseptic smell of the private medical facility filled Luciana's nostrils as Dr. Chen carefully cleaned the burns on her wrists. Morning light filtered through. Bulletproof windows, casting a soft glow over the sterile room. In the adjacent treatment area, she could hear muffled voices as another doctor removed the bullet from Salvatore's shoulder. Her body ached, but the physical pain was already beginning to fade under the influence of proper medical care and strong painkillers. The psychological wounds would take longer to heal, the terror of Raphael's torture, the uncertainty of whether Salvatore would find her in time. The door opened quietly, and Agent Hayes stepped in, her expression grim but satisfied. She'd come alone, having used her personal contacts rather than official channels to locate them. Weber's in custody, Hayes announced without preamble. The evidence Salvatore provided was ironclad. When we raided the factory, we recovered Raphael's devices. The encryption didn't survive his security team's attempt to wipe them, but our tech unit managed to recover enough. Multiple murder orders, payoff records, everything. Luciana nodded slowly, wincing as Dr. Chen applied antibiotic ointment to a particularly raw spot. And what happens to me now? You're clear, Hayes said, pulling out official-looking documents. These classify you as a confidential informant who's fulfilled all obligations. No legal exposure. She paused, glancing toward the room where Salvatore was being treated. Him, I can only offer a truce. We'll focus elsewhere. While he transitions more operations legitimate, it's the best I can do. Throughout Saturday and into Sunday, Luciana drifted in and out of sleep as her body began healing. She watched Salvatore manage the aftermath of Raphael's betrayal from his hospital bed, his injured arm in a sling as he made call after call. His voice remained steady and controlled, but she could see the tension in his jaw, the careful way he held himself to avoid pulling at his stitches. The commission meeting was held remotely Sunday evening, with Salvatore's tech team ensuring secure connections. From her bed, Luciana listened as he systematically laid out Raphael's betrayal. the doctored recordings, the FBI corruption, the planned assassinations of other family heads. By the end, no one questioned his position or power. Monday morning came too quickly. Dr. Chen cleared Luciana for travel, though she recommended continued rest. A black SUV waited to transport them to a safe house in the Catskills while things settled. As they wound through mountain roads, Luciana stared out the window at the passing autumn colors, her heart heavy with the decision she'd reached during her recovery. "I can't stay in your world," she said softly, not looking at Salvatore. "What I saw in that factory, what Raphael did, I understand why your justice was necessary, but I can't live with that level of violence. It goes against everything I am, everything I want to be." Salvatore was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "I know. I've seen how each act of violence, even justified, cuts at your soul. I won't ask you to compromise who you are. You'll ensure my safety, always, wherever you go, whatever you choose." The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of new identities in quiet Vermont streets. Salvatore's resources secured her a position at a local clinic in a small cottage on the outskirts of town. The work fulfilled her, finally allowing her to use her nursing skills. But she couldn't shake the habit of checking over her shoulder or the ache in her chest when she thought of Salvatore. Late November brought early snow, coating the world in white silence. Luciana's boots crunched on fresh powder as she walked up the path to her cottage after her evening shift. She was already thinking about a hot shower when she saw him. Salvatore, waiting on her porch, snowflakes catching in his dark hair. Before she could speak, he held out a thick folder. Inside were plans for a community healthcare facility, complete with architectural drawings and budgets. The location was in his territory, specifically designed to serve those who couldn't afford proper medical care. "It needs a director," he said quietly. "Someone who understands both nursing and the realities of my world. Someone who can work within its constraints while maintaining their own moral compass." Luciana stared at the plans, her heart racing. "You're not asking me to compromise?" "No, I'm offering you a way to help others while remaining under my protection." He stepped closer, his breath visible in the cold air. "From the moment you risked everything to whisper that warning in my ear, I've been captivated by your courage and compassion. You saw me as a man worth saving, and that made me want to be worthy of it." 6 months had transformed the abandoned warehouse into a state-of-the-art medical facility. Sunlight streamed through large windows, warming the waiting room where mothers cradled sick children and elderly patients waited for care they couldn't get elsewhere. Luciana moved through the clinic with purpose, her white coat a stark contrast to the designer dresses she wore to Salvatore's business functions. "Mrs. Rodriguez, your blood pressure is much better," she said, updating the chart of an elderly woman who'd been skipping meals to afford her medication before the clinic opened. "And the pharmacy will have your prescription ready before you leave." The woman clasped Luciana's hand. "God bless you and your man for this place." Luciana smiled, though the reference to Salvatore still stirred complex emotions. By day, she ran the clinic according to her ethical standards, providing care to everyone regardless of their connections. By night, she stood beside Philadelphia's most powerful crime boss as he methodically transformed his empire. Their relationship had found its balance in these contrasts. Salvatore never brought violence to her clinic, and she never questioned the methods he sometimes used to protect what was his. When he visited, he left his guards outside and watched her work with quiet pride. That evening, Luciana changed from scrubs into an elegant black dress for the gathering of the 5 families. Salvatore had spent months negotiating new territory agreements as he shifted more operations legitimate. The other families were adapting to this evolution, some more willingly than others. "You're sure you want me there?" she asked as Salvatore helped her with her necklace, his fingers lingering on her neck. "Always," he replied, his voice carrying that mix of tenderness and steel she'd come to know so well. "You're part of every decision now." The meeting was held in one of Salvatore's legitimate venues, a high-end restaurant closed for a private event. Security was extensive but subtle. Luciana recognized the regular staff had been replaced with Salvatore's people, all armed and watchful. The 5 family heads arrived with their top lieutenants. Luciana knew them all now: the calculating Vincenzo Romano, the volatile Marcus DeSantis, the diplomatic Anthony Caruso, and the cautious Gabriel Rossi, no relation. Each commanded significant power in their territories, but none matched Salvatore's influence. Through the elaborate dinner, Luciana observed the subtle power plays. Every gesture, seating arrangement, and order of speaking carried meaning. She had learned to read these signs over the months, though she maintained her role as Salvatore's elegant, intelligent partner rather than an active participant. During the discussion of new territory lines, Marco Vitale, one of Romano's underbosses, repeatedly cast suspicious glances at Luciana. She recognized his type. Old school, resistant to change, threatened by her presence in these traditionally male circles. Finally, Vitale couldn't contain himself. "With respect, Moretti," he interrupted as Salvatore outlined plans for expanding legitimate shipping operations. "How can we discuss sensitive business with a former FBI informant at the table?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Salvatore set down his wineglass with deliberate care. Luciana felt the shift in his energy, the contained violence that made him so dangerous. "Choose your next words carefully, Marco," Salvatore said softly. The quiet in his voice was more terrifying than any shout, but Vitale, perhaps emboldened by wine or his own stupidity, pressed on. "We all know she made deals with the feds. How can you be sure she won't turn again? Love makes men weak." Salvatore moved with shocking speed. Before anyone could react, he had Vitale pinned to the table, a steak knife pressed to the man's throat. The other guards hadn't even drawn their weapons, knowing better than to interfere. "She's not my weakness," Salvatore said, his voice still eerily calm. "She's the reason I'm still alive, and she is mine, now and forever." The knife pressed deeper, drawing a thin line of blood. "The only weak man here is the one questioning my judgment." "Romano," quickly intervened. Marco spoke out of turn. "He will be dealt with appropriately." Salvatore released Vitale, who stumbled back, hand to his bleeding throat. The message was clear to everyone in the room. Threatening Luciana was the one line no one dared cross. His devotion to her wasn't weakness. It was his most terrifying quality. The meeting proceeded without further incidents. New territories were assigned, agreements were signed, and alliances were reinforced. Through it all, Luciana maintained her composure, though her heart raced at Salvatore's display of possession. Later that night, in their penthouse overlooking the city, Luciana treated the small cuts on Salvatore's knuckles from where he'd slammed them into the table. "Was that display really necessary?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Salvatore caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "Your compassion has become my greatest strength, not my weakness. The other families need to understand that." He pulled her closer. "You've changed how I rule, made me see better ways to use my power, but never doubt that I'll destroy anyone who threatens what we've built." Luciana understood the duality of their life together, her healing hands and his capacity for violence, her moral compass and his ruthless protection, her light balancing his darkness. They had found their equilibrium in these contradictions. The next morning, she returned to her clinic, treating patients who whispered prayers of gratitude. Salvatore's protection meant no one dared harm her work here, while her influence slowly transformed his empire into something that could exist in the light.